And then just truly for me, like I didn't realize how much I dreamt about being a director and wanting to do something like this, and to be able to articulate these things to people and then watch you take it on your own and make it something like I tear up watching you guys. So I just want to let you know, no matter who's in this audience, I am your biggest fan.
Aww.
So thank you so much for everything. And I love you all.
Yeah,
James! Welcome to whatever this is. I'm calling it. I am bringing this back in my a podcast that I did for years called Story Matters. We're using Twitch as a broadcast platform, but if you're listening to this on YouTube or if you're watching it wherever, welcome to Story Matters. The concept of this is it is a podcast, video, hangout, conversation about stories and the artists who tell them. So I want to welcome today one of the most prolific artists I know, James Tolbert. James is truly a multi-hyphenate. You are a actor, a singer, a dancer, a choreographer, and then most recently director of the how do you even describe VHS Christmas Carols? It is the continuation, the further development into a full stage production. The evolution of this now 4-year in the making project, which is VHS Christmas Carol. Welcome, James Tolbert. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you, Kurt Mega. I like saying the full names. It makes us feel so official. I love that.
James Tolbert and Kurt Mega. James and I have had the honor, for me, to get to like work together on so many different things, often getting paired together, whether it's starkid stuff or pulp musicals or this. It just feels like I always get to be in your orbit, and it's awesome. And I had the extreme honor of getting to be directed by you this past November. What was that, 3 weeks ago?
I know it's December. It doesn't feel like December, but yeah, we totally did that show in November.
Yeah. In the evolution, the mounting of VHS Christmas Carols, which is a full length 2-act musical, an extension of the VHS Christmas Carols from years past. And you took the reins this go around and you directed it. And I want to dive into the semantics and specifics, but I just have to say, you are born to be a director. I mean, we had a crazy tight rehearsal schedule. Just this reality of how shows get made. And, you know, that's a lot of starkid projects happen in a very tight window. And there was just literally no part where I ever felt like you didn't know what you wanted or what you were doing. I'm sure you felt stress. I'm sure you felt a lot of that. But every time I felt, oh my God, I look at you and you were just like, here's what we're doing. And it just was like, okay, yeah, okay. James seems fine. And if James seems fine, I think we must be doing okay. And it really yes, it was crazy. But by the time we opened, I don't know, speaking for me, I felt completely prepared and confident. And there's always the nerves of it happening. But I just such a strong sense of what you wanted and what the show was. And it was awesome. So I'm just so curious. My first question is like, how was the experience for you stepping from being a performer and assistant director and choreographer to sort of taking on fully the reins and adding in all these pieces and staging in a even more immersive kind of way than happened in the Bourbon Room? Mm-hmm. What was that process like for you? Like, take me back to like finding out you were going to do it. And then like, I don't know, to what it was to see it all come together.
Yeah. So I was approached earlier in the summer. Well, actually kind of later in the summer. Brian Holden had called me and said, hey, you know, we're going to do a Christmas Carol production this year. And do you want to direct this time? And I'd asked in the past to have more of a hand in directing starkid shows, which is how I started assisting specifically Corey in the other versions of both Christmas Carol, and then when we both co-directed the Jangle Ball tour. So having a chance to do this version of it was probably, I think immediately I was like, yeah, I'm ready for this. I got this. I want to do this thing because I think Christmas Carol just speaks to so much of what I love about 80s style music and dance. It was just like, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do. This is right up my alley. And so almost immediately I started thinking about what our stage is going to look like. And so like Clark had sent me the tracks and just everything about his ideas about what the first act, which is all brand new material. And then, of course, we already knew what Christmas Carol itself was. And so the two things I wanted to do was find an identity for Act One and find a way to augment Act Two. Because I feel like, it's my philosophy with sequels, or reboots or things or revivals. If you're going to do it, you got to give us a reason to see it again.
Yeah, 100%.
And
which, like, so many properties that we love, I feel like that's what makes them get soured, is you just go, it was just a remount for the sake of it. And that's such a good thing to consider when going, why do this again? Is like, there has to be a why there.
Exactly. And so in finding out how I could create something similar but different for Act Two, it helped me influence how I wanted to tell the stories in Act One. Now, right off the bat, I do have to say, Clark is such a gifted writer that it made my job a million times easier, because he is so clear and so concise about how he wants to tell these stories that you've heard a million times, but makes them so interesting. And I would be nowhere without the focus that Clark had. I think there are people that take years to get to the level of writing that Clark was able to get to in just a couple of months.
Yep.
So that really, really, really helped me.
But I think, not to derail it all, because I want to hear this, but just speaking to Clark's talents, something that he does, especially both acts, but because Act One was all new, by putting himself as this narrator in that space and sort of recontextualizing and questioning, like, why are we doing this? Like, why are these characters doing this? I feel like it to me is what really makes it feel not like, oh, we're doing these stories again, but it's a character actually going, I want to ask and analyze this from a new perspective and go, wait, what is that? Like, it was such a fresh take, because it doesn't just feel rehashed. It feels like this guy playing piano is trying to go, what does all this mean though? And I loved that as an entry point into, like, stuff that you've heard before, but as a way to see it through fresh eyes. I just thought that was such a phenomenal, his lyricism is so funny and introspective. And like, I just love the narrator being like, what is this?
Yes.
It's great.
And to top it all off, he had an awesome mullet. So I'm just very thankful.
Exactly.
But yeah, so back to the stage. So there was a concept one, we'll call it, of what I wanted the stage to be. And anyone that knows me knows that I love anything that lights up. I just like bright lights and things that change colors. I think that's great. So really, our set was going to be a lot of lights, because I was also told our budget and I wanted to stay within that budget. So I kind of had to formulate some things. But really, if you have seen the digital ticket or you were in person, so what we had on the TV screen are those the fast forward, rewind, and pause buttons. So those were actually going to be huge, and they were going to be at the back of the stage. We were going to have all these hanging tube lights over the stage. And there was going to be a couple more things. We had to nix that idea for a multitude of reasons, namely which we had to share the space. And so it would have been impossible to try to take that stuff off and up and down each night. That being said, we went to concept two, which as a child of the 90s, I was a big MTV fanatic. I loved watching music videos. I loved watching things. I would record them on my VHS tapes that I had. I would rewind these things over and over. And so the concept then became, okay, what if we had a giant TV and we're kind of watching the TV, and then I have the band, which luckily was only two people. We can put them on a giant VHS tape, and so we're just kind of like immersed into this old style, like, hey, let's watch this 80s variety show. And that's kind of the feel that I wanted, was like, it's a little bit of variety. It's a lot of music video, and very much entrenched in that realm of what the storytelling that music videos, I think, used to do. Some of them today can, but I think back then they were way more, there was way more story to those.
Yeah, that's something like, yes, some videos today really go all out, but man, I feel like the 80s in particular, the evolution of MTV as a platform, there was this idea of like almost a self-contained musical. It's like, yes, it's a song, but we're going to tell an entire visual story that just like doesn't exist that way a lot today. A lot of times it's just like, here's a singer lip syncing, looking good. And I loved that every number really took on this feeling of being an entire, like, it felt like a music video. Yeah. I kept thinking of like, the Michael Jackson era of like Thriller or something, or Smooth Criminal, like really taking your time with it. I love that. And the tape concept was so well executed, and it just looks so cool. Shout out to Neem Sullivan, was our set designer, and man, it's just, the set was so like from the jump, you just understood what it was.
Yeah.
And I remember when you like showed, I think, schematics, and it was like, oh, cool, a VHS tape, and then you saw it in person, and it was like, oh, it's a giant tape.
Yeah.
It's just it was so fun. It was such a fun. It started telling the story before anything even started. It was rad. I love the set. It was so simple, but it worked so effectively.
Yeah, shout out to Neve, because they did a fantastic job of just executing exactly what I wanted out of that. And it was a simple set.
Also, Michigan grad, right?
Yes, go blue. They just graduated.
Yeah, like in May.
In May.
Yeah.
So great for them. I'm really happy for them.
Yeah, really fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you all execute obviously within the confines of budget and location and space and all that so beautifully. Thinking about like reinterpreting it from a director standpoint, because I think you did some really interesting and wonderful things staging wise that I think in years past worked really well, but this is a completely new space. We were in a thrust. The Bourbon Room was much more like out into the audience or like away, whereas this sort of, the audience was around us. It was sort of they were in a half circle, and I just thought you did some really interesting things staging wise. I think your skills as a choreographer, I felt like I saw that not just in the dancing, but in the way that you kept everything moving and shifting and flowing. And I'm just curious, like, as you were looking at the story, like, were you thinking in terms more as a dancer, or more like, how do you blend those two worlds together? Because you just did it so beautifully. Does that come seamlessly to you? Do you just sort of think like a choreographer as you're staging? Like, what was that process as you begin to go, where do I want people to go?
Yeah. It's funny. Having so much background as a dancer, I've just thought about so many times I've seen shows and thinking, how do we move through this space in an effective way to convey the story? And what that means is like, oh, is this a dance heavy moment? Or does this just need some specific movement to keep us going? And what I like to think of it is that it's a train, right? It's a constant locomotive that's just constantly moving. And you make a couple stops and you might pick up some things along the way. So when you take a number like VHS Miss, the top of the show, right? Immediately I'm having everyone come on and they're bringing these boxes that are now going to be used throughout the rest of the show. But also in a very specific moment I have at the end of the first song, I make that play button. Well, now I've made a play button. And we're starting the show. And what do? I have the first main character of our story come out, press play. Now we're into it. And so everything kind of connects. And so what I'm thinking is, and this is how I work as a choreographer specifically, is where did we start and where do we need to end? And then I figure out how to get there. And oftentimes when I'm just the choreographer, it can be a little bit of a battle, because depending on who your director is, they might not necessarily have the eye for, okay, well, this is going to happen over here. So if you can just figure out how to get into the song, we'll be fine. And it's like, when I'm director and choreographer, I already have that interweaving, right? And so I know how I want to finish this sentence. And so everything is very much connected and done with purpose. And so you might have seen me a couple times during the rehearsal process. If ideas come up, which I'm a very collaborative person, I love hearing ideas, but sometimes there might be one thing where I have to say no, only because, hey, I've got this flow of things happening and I really want to keep this moment, but maybe we can use that at another time when it augments itself or it accentuates that point.
Yeah. Yeah, you're staging, and I would even, going back to like my experience just doing like Black Friday, whenever you were in it, obviously, and then you choreographed it, I'm not the best dancer. Thank you for your patience with me.
Always.
But I always knew, like, it was easy to track why I was doing a thing, which I have taken many a dance class, or I've been in shows where sometimes the choreography, I go, and then I kind of attribute it to not being a good dancer, but then I'll be like, this doesn't make sense in my body. Like it feels like I'm breaking the flow of what we're doing to do a thing. And the way that you choreograph and the way that you stage, it's just really intuitive. And I think also because you're on stage with us, and I think that's probably a big part is you understand what it is to be up there. But yeah, I think that like the staging always felt like, oh, of course I would move here. Like there was never a moment that you were like, do this, and you'd go, okay, sure. It was always like, yeah, absolutely. Like, and you know, sometimes there are things as actors where the director's like, I just need you to do this. I know it doesn't make sense. And you go, all right, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's really egotistical when actors are like, every single thing must be, it's like, sometimes you just need to move out of the way. But your staging in particular, it always was like, oh, right, I'm moving here because of this. This is a great reason. I feel like I'm even like, one of the last numbers of Gift of the Magi on What'd You Do? Is that the name of the track?
What do you do? Yeah.
Just like that really fun thing where you had the
wall,
the wall and the moving wall and then the door. And like, yeah, it like everybody had why they were doing what they're doing. And like, I'm over here being like, yeah, it's going to be great. And then it like, there was a lot of movement, but everybody I think was very specific in like why they're moving. And it makes me as an actor not feel insane to be like,
oh, sorry, now I'm Bucky. Hi, Bucky.
Oh
no. Oh boy. Sorry about that.
Bucky had thoughts on the blocking.
Bucky had so many thoughts. Yeah.
You're really gifted at, like not just cool movement, but like it feels motivated and specific, and it makes it really easy as the actor to just be like, yeah, of course I'm doing that, you know?
Yeah. And also I with this particular show in mind, like I knew I only had 4 days to stage the entire show. And then we had a load-in day where the cast had off, but I was still there at the theater. And then I had 3 days to tech the show. So my mindset from the jump was, I want to know exactly how I want this show to go so that I can go to you all and just say, hey, this is what's happening. I wish, if we had more time, I think I could be even more of the director to like actually like talk about character and let's give you some more, some depth to what we're doing. But I think that speaks to the testament of our group, is that everyone showed up ready to play. And at no point was I worried about anybody. I was worried about the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
The technical elements that needed to get there. But as long as I could show up, give you all the support and the foundation of where we are, I had no doubt that we were all going to rise to the occasion, and everyone did and exceeded, I think.
We didn't have a ton of time, but despite you still took time. Like you sat down with Janae and I, and we had this great, it was maybe like a 10-15 minute conversation, but it was so helpful just to you really had some really specific thoughts about this moment, why you're saying this, how to play. And it's like, so even though there wasn't a ton of time to sit down and pour through every lyric and question that, I still felt like I had a really strong sense of that. Like I wasn't going, what is this show? Like, and I think that's a testament to obviously Clark's writing is so sharp and so fun, but also you still had a perspective and opinion, even if there wasn't a ton of time to sit around and talk about it. But you trusted that we would do it. And I think everybody did. And that was just awesome. Yeah. But for folks in the chat are kind of blown away. Yeah. We staged the show in 4 days. So it was like, we got there, we started on a Thursday, I think, right?
We started on Thursday. Yeah.
It was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then really we were into tech. And so the whole show kind of needed to be learned. And then James and the amazing crew, spent the rest of the next few days just like trying to piece all the visual elements. And I thought on Sunday, well, this is it. This is the last rehearsal we'll get. That's for us. But we still got run throughs in that were incredibly productive. And like that Wednesday and even the Thursday, and then we did a Friday run through felt like the show. I thought on Sunday I would feel really underprepared. And then by Thursday I was like, I think we're good.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a testament to everybody just coming together,
Absolutely. Yeah. I could not have asked for a better flow for anything that I've ever done, because I've done summer stocks where we had 10 days to put on a whole show, and this is a show that's existed for over 50 years, and we still before opening night hadn't finished a curtain call, so like the fact that we were able to put Christmas carols together, and everything just worked, and it was so by the
Yeah.
time we had that first audience, I was like, wow, we really did this, and I have never been more proud.
You said everybody came to play, and when people ask me like what it's like working with, starkid or any of the awesome projects, whether it's like and I'm not trying to lump them together because they're all very distinct, but there is a common energy and a lack of ego and a passion for the work that I have found amongst doing starkid projects or Tin Can Brothers or Shipwrecked or whatever, like all these wonderful people we get to work with. And I feel like you nailed exactly what makes it so joyful, is that everyone comes to play. And, I'm sure you've had this experience in other professional work. That is a rare thing. Like more often than not, when I've worked on projects, especially like TV shows and stuff, there's a lot of people that you're like, boy, you do not want to be here.
Yep.
But we must somehow work together because we're both being paid to do this. But I worked on a show, last year where one of the actors in particular was just as like, this person hates this, they hate this. They hate everyone here.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
it is a baffling environment to try to be creative, and you go, okay, it's a gig, it's a job, but the marked difference between that and then like being in a room of people who are just like, oh my God, we get to do this. It's night and day. And it's truly one of the reasons I keep trying to do this thing. Cause I go, this is worth it. This is like what we got to do during that week and a half is the reason that I want to keep trying to do this. And then you do the other gigs because you have to.
Absolutely. But yeah, and they say that, I think someone told me very early on in my career, you will like about 1 out of every 3 shows you do, and you'll love 1 out of every 5.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things where, it might be the show like, you might not like the director, you might not like there's always a reason to be a little bit off about what you're doing, but every once in a while you'll get that one project where it's just, I could stay here forever. Yeah. And I kind of feel like Christmas Carol is that thing. This is now the 4th year we've done this in some version, but every year it just brings us joy. We're just happy. It's like a reunion, and then we get to do the thing that we love, and then we go, and then we'll come back to it.
And I feel like you and Clark really tapped into that because even Christmas as a holiday, like it's interesting. There's obviously films and shows and music that we often revisit, but the holidays in particular, people tend to have certain things they come back to. And I love that opening number, VHS of like, we always come back again and again. And I definitely had the thought of there's kind of a meta idea there. Like obviously it's, people love certain Christmas stories and certain stories hold true, but then also you're seeing a group of actors and creators and performers and also coming back to them again and again and like finding meaning and deriving meaning. It's just kind of an interesting thing that we do that as a culture with holiday stories, but also we're doing that ourselves as creators. It's an interesting dynamic there. I have some great questions to run by you. First, I'm going to start with some questions that came from my patrons who submitted in advance, and then I want to open up to the chat. But this one comes from Abby, and Abby asked, I'd love to hear you talk about connecting the 3 stories together and what that process was like, what the reactions were. And then I was shocked the first time I watched it and realized that it was actually, spoilers, I won't say what they said, but more connected than maybe initially realized. When did that idea kind of first and you know what, we'll say just like we're going to spoil things here, so
I think it's hard to avoid it, we will spoiler alert everybody. So it started in 2 phases. The first was from a logistical standpoint. We knew that Allie was our match girl. And the question became, do we want her to be Turkey Boy in the last number and then change back into Match Girl for a curtain call? And me being in my performer mind, I'm not making anyone do that. That's way too fast of a change. So so then it became, well, how about we have Match Girl do the Turkey Boy part? And so like Clark and I kind of like, oh yeah, we could change this lyric here, we can make that work. And which slowly evolved a couple, because we threw in like an extra, would you like to buy some matches? Like that was just a quick thing that he added in, because we also wanted to make the point that though in her story, Match Girl does die, we didn't want Match Girl to die in this story. So
Right.
this was the bridge between that, is like, okay, make her the one that buys the turkey. Well, then it became, well, what do we do with Jim and Della? Because again, it was the same situation where it's like, I'm going to need them in their costumes for the final bows. It's like, okay, could we bring them in? And so the question became like, oh, well, what if he like, bought the watch? I mean, like, oh, if Scrooge bought the watch. And I have to give full credit to Meredith, because the way it staged it, for sure, the three of you were going to meet. So that part was always going to happen. Meredith was the one that said, well, wait, Scrooge has to give him the watch back. Yeah. And I was like, oh, yeah. Because originally it was just giving up the debt. But then the watch ended up being probably the most iconic moment of this version of the show. And so
I also love it's not even like necessarily sung about like, and here's your watch. I love that it is a gesture that, and it's the best part of that moment for me was that this little thing that I actually only have on stage for a few minutes, but because of the music and because of the intentionality and because of everything coming together, that little object coming back got such, you could feel the audience collectively respond to it, and not just like, oh, cute, but like it touched something deep, something about like empathy and forgiveness and like the real joy of giving. Like, it gave me goosebumps, and we don't even talk about it. It's just thing that he goes, here you go, and it's just So yeah, bravo Meredith for like knowing that moment would work. And then I think also I love Jim and Della being the couple who's in debt, because you're like, right, because they talk the whole time about there's no money, we're and my boss is a jerk, and it's just so subtle. And I love that it wasn't necessarily like, my boss screwed. It's just, it was there if you want to make it. And I love that. It was so nice.
Yeah. And anyone that has followed the productions would know that part is coming up. So to put the two of you in that spot is fun and different. But then it helped me then create other moments in Act One. So like Scrooge's crosses, he runs into Della at one point, and then he runs into Match Girl. And if you notice that when he runs into Match Girl, he already has the watch in his hand. Yeah. So we've now just kind of said that like, okay, there's this ongoing thread, which for me helped me create the end of Act One, which is and Be the Light, Scrooge coming in and already setting the stage for him being in opposition with the rest of us, and that we're like lifting our candles up in the air, and he's the one that blows his candle out, and that's the end of the act. Just to really solidify that, give you a character before you meet him, and so the way we can integrating all those stories ended up being a lot of fun. It was like we had to reverse engineer some things, but it was really cool, and not something that we initially wanted to do, but we were so happy that we did it.
It kind of reminds me just stylistically of the things that I love about like musicals from the like 70s, and I guess 80s too, but like, I don't know, like a Godspell or like a Fantastics or something. This feeling of like watching an ensemble that is putting on hats, putting on jackets, becoming a character, but also you're watching an ensemble of people together. Like, I loved Be the Light so much because it is those characters, but also it's like the collective ensemble saying, hey, like you could join us. And, and I don't know, that number, particularly the fact that it goes from Match Girl passing away, as we realize. And then the fact that my favorite lyric is when Clark, he's saying like, why couldn't you do this? Why couldn't you that? And then he turns it on himself and he says, why couldn't you? Why couldn't I? And in that moment, it's like there's no judgment anymore. It's like putting ourselves into that. And I loved your choreography for that so much. I loved doing it every night. Just felt so beautiful. The like reaching and the, I don't know. There was just something, it just like moved me every night. I don't even know how to put my finger on what it was, but it's just like the story, the theme, the movement, the music, and the fact that it's beckoning this character who you know is going to go on this journey in Act 2. It's so good. It's so good. I loved how that came together. It's just worked so beautifully.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Here's another question.
Sure.
Jen asks, what inspires your choreography? Are there particular artists? Are there particular shows, teachers? Like what is it that kind of you tap into when you're thinking about staging and as a performer and a dancer, like what speaks to you?
Yeah, excellent question, because it's conditional depending on the music that I'm listening to. My background is primarily in jazz. So I think a lot, pop music is obviously the most applicable to that. But as I was saying before, watching a lot of music videos as a kid, I was obsessed with Michael Jackson's music videos. Smooth Criminal, Thriller, Remember the Time, Scream. There were so many different versions of how he moved a very specific way, but when you saw his dancers in sync with him, there's nothing better than a group of unison dancers together. It's my favorite thing, and I get chills. In fact, side note, if y'all haven't seen the Renaissance movie by Beyonce, go see it immediately.
You saw it twice, right?
And I was there on the birthday show, so I've seen it 3 times.
Yeah, you see it. You saw it in person, and then you saw the film.
Film twice.
Did you see it? Was it at SoFi? Was it?
I saw it at SoFi. Yep.
Oh man, amazing.
Just so, and she, I would say Beyonce right now and her team is doing what I want more artists to do, and that's using choreography and staging and theatrics really to enhance story. And so when I'm choreographing for the stage, it's very much like, okay, what is the style of movement that I'm hearing in this song?
Yeah.
And then how can I use that movement to further that story? Because I could show up and give you guys just a bunch of movements, arms, legs, whatever, for 3 minutes. I could do that. I find that you dilute your choreography when you're just trying to be showy.
Yep.
When you are more deliberate and when you are trying to progress something and there's a purpose behind it, I'd rather you be clean and simple than overly complicated and messy. So in terms of my influences, watching stuff like Michael Jackson, I grew up also watching Gregory Hines. I don't know if you ever yes, he's a fantastic tapper, but also just as a mover and as an actor, he had such poise and grace, and I love watching him move. Big Bob Fosse fan. I took a lot of classes when I was younger and the Fosse style, and also I think when people think Fosse, they think a lot of like Sweet Charity and Chicago. Stuff like that. But there's also, like, you could look at Damn Yankees, which a lot of people don't know that he choreographed originally, but yeah, that was his. And he had very athletic choreography because he had a lot of ballet training in him. And so there's a lot of that. So it really just depends primarily on what kind of song I'm hearing and what kind of rhythms I'm listening to that'll influence that. Because perfect example is something like Cold, Cold Streets of the City, which immediately I was like, this is a Vogue number. That's exactly what this is. This is very like, ooh, like we're very full of ourselves. Ooh, lots of style, high fashion, and all of their movement is in that realm. And I never let them leave that. Yes, exactly.
So
very,
good.
very.
My favorite one is where I don't know which part of the song is, but they like go over and they do like the elbow and it goes.
Yes,
I love that part. I was like, I love that. I love that.
I will meticulously go through a song and find rhythms that no one's looking for, but because I hear it, I'm like, okay, well, now we have to use that.
Yeah,
and that's little moments like that.
You saying that really makes me, again, I think like this is why I've always had so much fun dancing your choreography. When you first teach it, I'll feel like, oh my God, I'm going to blow it. Because your stuff you got such a flow to it. But then by the time we open, I always have so much fun. Like I was thinking about the specificity on like the wiggly jingle of like the opening. And it's so like little kid and weird. And then like the chaos of like Feast or Famine and the fact that it's like this mob thing. And then Be the Light. There's like this just flow and this acceptance. And I guess as an actor, I'm not once I've learned the choreography, which takes me longer than some, but once I've learned it, I'm not thinking about the motion. It's like I feel like I'm just still in the scene, and the body is an extension of that. And I think like your choreography in particular connects the emotional thing with the movement. And I feel like, as you said, even sometimes I see shows, like I've seen tours of shows where it kind of feels like the show stops and you're like, I'm watching incredibly impressive movement. I mean, it's amazing, but I'm like, what? Why? Okay. Oh, we're watching. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I don't feel like the story is progressing. And I think you're so good at that, progressing story through movement. It's an amazing skill.
Thank you. Yeah. The side note, I actually want to mention about that. I have to give a big shout out to Joey, Lauren, and Brian.
Oh my gosh.
Because that trio, listen, like I knew I was going to use them. How they elevated that, I could not have asked for anything better, because like they were going to serve as just like kind of for lack of an ensemble. I was going to have them just kind of help move things along in each the first act stories, but their talent and their eye and mind is so I'm in awe of the three of them, and they made everything 10 times better than what I could tell them to do it. It was really great.
So funny, and each one is so differently weird and specific, and they created so much comedy that I'm not saying it wasn't there, but they took moments that and they just made it their own, and it was just a delight. And I had a thought, maybe it was closing night. I had this thought because I would always watch them from the VOM, and I thought their trio is to me what makes a StarKid show a StarKid show. Like there's these beautiful things happening. There's a lot of emotion and all that's wonderful, but they're there to kind of just remind you, like there's this play and this like this silliness that kind of makes everyone just go like, oh my God, this is like, I'm just having fun. And then something will happen. Like I love the moment when we're doing the, what'd you do? And that we're going around and it's so funny and there's a wall and then open the door, bam. And then it's like immediately into, oh my God, your hair is gone. That ability to turn a dime to me is what makes a StarKid show feel like distinctly weird and goofy, but never like thin or like trying to chase the joke. It just is there. It's a kind of innate, you know?
Yeah. And that was the thing. We learned that first show, we got so many laughs that we weren't prepared for, just because we'd only been performing it for ourselves. You know, we were just enjoying things. And so when we started hearing these laughs, I remember the second show, I just told everyone like, hey, you did a great job. Don't chase any of those laughs. Just let them come, because I feel like we earned all those organically. But I think, and I also think our audience, you know, they've been with us for over 13 years now. I think they're predisposed to laugh at some things, and they might just laugh at us for being who we are. But that energy is so specific to a StarKid show, and I'm glad we were able to capture that in new ways this time.
As a performer, you do a show, you get a laugh and you go, oh my God, I guess that's funny. And then it can become really easy, even subconsciously, to like be like, okay, here's the funny part, guys.
Right.
And it can really upend the sort of honesty of like what made it funny in the first place, you know?
Right. I do other shows. Specifically, I'm a warthog in a certain show at a Disney park. But there's a specific line, an ad lib that I use, and I never change it, because there are days where it gets all this laughter, and there are days where everyone's like, eh. And I'm like, I'm not changing anything, because like, listen, I know it works, and maybe y'all just didn't want this joke today, but I know the joke is good. I know it works. You know?
Yeah. I love that. Avalie asks, what was it like to, obviously you directed and staged it, but also you're in it. Yeah. You know, and so once the show's up, you're stepping into performer. What is it like to balance those two things? The juxtaposition of like, the show's on track, everything looks good, but also I need to be in the show as a performer and be in the mix. How do you balance those two things on like actual show? Do you kind of turn off your director brain for a bit and go, all right, I trust it? Or like, do you constantly see both sides even as you're on stage? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah. I'm one of those people who's can't turn both sides of the brain off at the same, or at one at a time. So I've learned now, having done this specifically in StarKid, that I've been a choreographer or a director in the show as well. I don't know that I like doing it, only because I find that specifically when I'm behind the table, but also in the show, my mind stays behind the table even when I'm on stage, and I am still thinking of other elements and looking at things. And it's not quite necessarily the right venue to be doing that, because I do want to focus on character, and I often think of myself last in those situations. So I will say that I'm not going to say that I'll never do it again. I either do one or the other, because it's going to happen at some capacity, whatever. But I will say I need to learn how to incorporate myself into my direction, because I'm so concerned about everybody else and everything else that I am literally the last. I didn't do my own costume changes until the day of the show. So I have to remember what it's like to
even
be that performer.
I think like our final dress, you were like, oh right, I need to. You're like you kind of had to consciously go, okay, I have to. All right, I'm going to step out of the audience, and I knew probably you were like, I really want to watch this, but okay, all right, I'll do the thing. And I relate to that hardcore. This year I finished a feature film that I co-directed, but I was also in. And yeah, it's like you're just sitting there thinking about all these others, and you're like, well, does it look okay in the light? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh right, what do I say? I don't even, it feels so secondary, because all these other elements, it's amazing when directors can do that effortlessly, but it's a really challenging thing, because I think, like you said, often your performance really becomes secondary, because you're just like, whatever, I'll be fine. I need to make sure everybody else is fine,
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll work on that. I'll get better.
You did it really well, but I'm sure it's a lot. We'll get the person from John Burroughs High School to be Christmas Electricity.
I've been saying, like, listen, we're ready to get a new Christmas present. So if you're ready, I will call you up, and you can take over.
Shout out to, there was a lovely May Roth, who is a John Burroughs High School alumni, shared a video of they did a Christmas concert, and they did like Christmas Electricity as one of their review numbers. And John Burroughs High School is the high school that Glee was modeled off of, and they shot the pilot there. So it's like a full show choir number. And the person who's singing it, they're great. I mean, they're riffing, there's costumes, there's sequins, there's dancers with mics. It's amazing.
Listen, if you need a job, take it. I can sit in the audience. I can watch. I'll be so happy. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah, it's great. Go check it out on YouTube. I tweeted it. Carrie asks, this was your first time directing VHS Christmas Carols, and was curious, like, obviously Corey did such a phenomenal job and created this world and this template and the feeling and the aesthetic. And so the question is, like, how do you find a way to make it your own and honor what has been staged before, but kind of reinterpret it for a new thing? You've talked a little bit about that, but I'm just curious, was that a conscious kind of process of like, how do I reinvent this? How do I adapt it? How do I put my stamp on it? Knowing you, I feel like you're probably thinking more in terms of what is the story? Like, that's the most important thing. But yeah, I'm just curious, like, how different that was to like go, hey, I'm adapting a thing that has been done, but for a new time, a new platform.
Yeah, totally. Corey did a fantastic job of setting up what Christmas Carol is. Like I knew I did not want to stray far from that, because I think the costuming that he and June had come up with was fantastic, and I was like, I want to keep all of that. And also, well, I'm very lucky that we got to work with June on this version too, because June is one of the best costume designers ever. So basically, what I wanted to do was keep as much of the aesthetic as possible, but specifically with the Christmas Carol portion, augment. So what that meant is, for a song like Three Spirits, let's add in the element of, the ghosts are coming through the TV, and now we're entering here. We have chains, because Marley's talking about chains. I love those chains.
I love that. Yes. I love that staging with you guys weaving under each other. It's just so cool. I love that.
Yeah, taking things like that. I wanted to kind of reformat the Christmas Electricity dance, because I wanted to be a little bit more about, hey, let's see Scrooge learn a little bit more of this choreography, so that by the time he gets there, we've earned this moment of him fully immersed in it and dancing and really having a good time. And then
AJ was like, I didn't know Scrooge had to know that. I thought he did. he
Oh
was
yeah. Oh,
he was freaking out. He was like, "Wait a second, I thought Scrooge didn't know this," and I was like, "Not in James' version."
not in my version. Scrooge is a primo ballerina. No, so there was that, and then I think my favorite my favorite thing that I did was the at the end of the final ghost was keeping people on stage.
I love
You know,
this. I love this
yeah,
choice.
I really wanted to have a little more tangible thing for Scrooge to go through. I mean, there's a logistical reason behind doing that as well, but also I wanted to have him give him something to play off of, and really he's playing off of people not giving him anything, and I think that's what makes it even more tumultuous. Is that he's pleading, saying, "Hey, I've changed. I'm going to be better," and just all these faces that he's wronged are just giving him nothing. And AJ said he really loved doing that part, and I'm so glad that he liked it. Yeah.
AJ just was so good in that moment. Like, it's one of my favorite moments being on stage was to come out as the Cratchits and do that incredibly sad moment where,
Mhm.
Tiny Tim has passed. And then that transition just from like being here. And then you could just see everybody kind of go ghost like, and the fact that they just fan out.
Mhm.
And then you get it was just such a beautiful visual moment. And then when I finally saw the digital ticket, I was like, oh, it looks so like, because I'm on stage, so I didn't know how it looked. It looks so rad. And yeah, I remember, when AJ is coming up to each of us and like pleading, and
Mhm.
you're not giving him anything, it just, it creates this hopeless dynamic. And then I think it makes the next number all the more joyous that
Mhm.
it wasn't real. I love the staging of that. And I love the lighting that Piper did, it goes red. It's just, that moment is so beautiful and so cinematic. I really love that moment.
Yeah, yeah, and Piper helped out so much. So that was the next thing, was that I needed really good theatrical lighting for the show, and I'm so lucky that I had Piper, because she's such an excellent storyteller, and the way we were able to communicate with each other to figure out these moments. Because there was one night after we had sent you guys home from rehearsal, and Piper and I stayed until like 1:30 in the morning, just going through more and more cues to just get the right aesthetic for each thing. And I would be nowhere without her. She really helped give the show some more identity, because we had a lot of concert lighting at Bourbon Room. And so this was much more like, okay, I need this spot here, I need to accent this moment over here, and Piper knew exactly how to do that. So
And I love the concept of the show being adaptable to the space. Like, the Bourbon Room was exactly what it should be. It was, it's a rock venue. There was people eating and drinking. It felt like a big party, and it was perfect for that. And then I love that you didn't try to take that concept and just shove it into this theater. You really let the space and what it was shape what it became. And I love the idea that the show is malleable and can fit where it needs to fit. It's like, that's a really cool thing.
absolutely.
It's not like this is the production. It's like, no, it changes depending on the location and the environment and the people. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Carrie also asks, did you have a favorite part of the new stories? Was there one of the stories or a favorite moment that really resonated with you in particular?
Oh, honestly, the most fun I had, and I promise it's not because you're right in front of me right now, but it's Della, my darling, into What's in a Gift. I think, first of all, Clark just wrote, those are just such great songs. And that the two of them are together the way that they are so great. But what made it so fun is that for a person like me who is a dancer and is, everyone's expecting like this big production, this was such an intimate moment between two people. And I was so happy to just break down those beats and find those moments. And because I remember the day that I figured out that you were going to put the watch chain on her as a necklace.
It's such a good choice.
I was just like, when I sat down and thought, I was like, oh, wait, that's brilliant. Because like, what a way to show that these two people are so in love with each other that they'll find whatever it is the nearest way to make the other person happy. Yeah. And so that she puts on one of her combs and then she puts it in your hair. I loved just finding the specificity in those moments, because and also the two of you, because I was able to watch those two songs every single night, and I just loved watching you both do those scenes. That was so honest and so beautiful, and I really, really loved that part.
I was so grateful that you allowed us to really scale it down for that part. It wasn't a big tableau moment, like I loved both in the music and just the way you staged it. It really felt like I didn't feel like I was doing a scene, you know, it really just felt like being there with somebody. And the fact that in a large, fun starkid musical, you could have this moment that's so intimate and just honest. And I love, yeah, that was like the easiest part to act, because it was just reacting to what I was hearing and what Janaea was doing. And it's like, oh, well, I'm crying, you know, it's like, it wasn't like a hard thing to go, why would I do this? And I loved the gesture of the watch chain, because, and it comes full circle with the watch later, but I love the idea that they get it all back, but only after they've realized they didn't need it. And I love the idea that the watch chain isn't just like, well, oh, well, throw it out. But like, no, you put it to use still. And like her hair will grow back, and they're using the watch chain as a necklace. And then they get it's like, it all comes back, but it's after they've realized they didn't need it. And I don't know. It was such a simple, beautiful gesture that it's great. Cause yesterday on my Patreon, we watched Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas, which I haven't seen in years, or I'd never seen actually. And they do the Gift of the Magi, and it's really sweet. But, you know, at the end, they're basically like, oh, well, isn't that crazy that we got each other these gifts that we can't use? Well, I love you anyway, so whatever. It's very like, it's an afterthought. And I love that you and Meredith found a way to like make those gestures stay in it and continue through. And I that was great. That was rad.
Yeah, I love that.
Wendy asked which story you were most excited to attack, but I mean, it's kind of the same question. So I think that's kind of a similar thing of like, you enjoyed doing that piece, but I think I would imagine all of them. I think to me, in general, the most exciting thing wasn't one particular story, but the idea of how to weave them all together and how to flow them all together. And I just, whenever I loved hearing the audience's reaction to whenever he would say, you know, she would go, do you want to buy some matches? And it's like, all of a sudden the audience was like, oh my God, it's coming full circle.
She's going to live.
Yeah. It's just so super intentional, and I love that. Okay, here's one last question from my patrons, and I'd love to turn it over to the chat. This is a slightly different variation, not about Christmas Carol, but Haley asks how much the two of us are allowed to talk about Space Baby, which is a project that you're going to be working on with me. And then, why do you think you keep getting paired up for Sniggle songs? That was the question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the magic pairing is, but yes, James is going to be doing one of the shorts that's going to be in the first episode of Space Baby, and I'm just excited about the proposition of exactly what you did with VHS, but that feeling of play. But now we have a different sandbox where we're not confined by a space or location. It really kind of is whatever the idea is. How do we take the thing I'm excited most about Space Baby is it's the same principle as when we do a show. It's like all hands on deck. What do we have access to? And let's use that. I think that's the like even doing VHS, it felt so electric and alive, not because it was like, we're dumping millions of dollars and so the sky's the limit. It's like, what can we do with what we have in the time that we have right now? And that to me is the magic of it. Not the, well, you had a year to perfect it and you had all the money in the world. It's like, no, you're watching, it's almost like the 48-hour film festival kind of approach to creating. And I love that. Sometimes it feels like the most pure version of creativity, because there's just not a chance to overthink it and make it too perfect. And I think as we, as Jamie and I have sat down to kind of figure out what is starkid, what is the DNA of it, one of the things that came up was like, it is watching, you can see the seams a little bit, not in a bad way, but you're seeing people, when you go see like a Marvel film, which are super fun and slick and often awesome, everything is perfect. You can't see the seams. Everything is like at the best it could be. And there's something I think really beautiful about the work we get to do in this space and other more independent spaces where you can see the work being done. You can see the glue, you can see the strings. And I think that that's actually kind of what makes it maybe really special. So I hope that Space Baby feels like that. And then it's also a place for just creators such as yourself to be like, what if we did this?
Mhm.
What if we tried this? Also, James, I got a new camera, which
Ooh.
I think is going to be perfect for your short. It's the one that I had in Chicago.
Oh, that one. Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, that's
we should
gonna be
talk.
great. Actually, I have an answer for that other question.
Yeah.
About us cosmically being paired together. Which happened. I think it started in like Black Friday, and then like it went to Pulp, and then we just always seem to revolve around each other, and then also Poker Face. So
Poker
yes.
Face. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I played James's son, and you were Benjamin Franklin in a hilarious riff on Hamilton, but about Franklin.
I
Brilliant.
want to hear the outtakes of that, because there's like this one clip of me coughing that is probably the most horrendous thing you've ever heard. But anyway, but I think what it is to be honest, Kurt, is that you are probably one of the most admirable people I've met in my career. You know, the way you are so talented, yet so inquisitive. You're always willing to learn and grow, but your perspective is so it's thought out. I feel like I've yet to meet someone as knowledgeable as you about this field.
Thank you.
You know, and I always feel like there's something I can learn. Like I love reading your tweets. I love like seeing the questions that you ask. I just love curious people, and because I'm a curious person myself, and I think when energies like that, we're just synced, and so it just so happens that we get put in the same rooms for certain things.
It's that curiosity is everything, because it's like you can always get better and improve, but the willingness to want to know what it is that makes something work, that's you saying everyone came to play. That to me feels like an extension of that, of like everyone came curious and to go, what is this? How can we? And you have to have that spark. And yeah, that's how I feel working with you. Like I feel like a spark of excellence, but in the pursuit of discovery. Because there's some people that, you know, are really like all about good and bad. You know, I want to be good. Everything needs to be, every creative choice needs to be good. But it kind of feels like their version of good. What like their way or the highway, and even you as a director, it felt like we were discovering it together. You had such a vision, but there was a lot of room for play, and I think like, you know, getting to do something like Pulp Musicals feels that way. Like Matt has such a clear vision, but there's so much room for our own interpretation, and it doesn't feel like there's any dumb questions. And I love the word curiosity. Like that is probably my defining characteristic. Like I want to know how stuff works. You know? First of all, thank you for joining me to talk about this. But of course, if any folks in the chat haven't checked it out yet, you can go check out the digital ticket. I think it looks great. It sounds great. It visually was captured so well on camera, and really, really just proud of it. It's like a really excellent new entry in the StarKid canon.
Yeah, shout out to Brian Holden for editing that, because it's
so fast.
I may be biased. It might be the best looking digital ticket we've ever put out.
It looks so good.
It looks really, really good.
And Mark Swiderski mixed it beautifully.
Yes,
it sounds great. It's just really excellent. Like I was thinking it would be good, and then I watched it and was like, wow.
Yes. But anyone that's thinking about it, please do, because remember, this is also how we get paid for StarKid stuff is through these digital tickets and you know, obviously merchandise and stuff like that. But we are independent artists, and so it's moments like these that help us to create future projects. So by all means, please help us support if you can, and then or you know, if you can go over to a friend's house and watch it that way, please do so as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really do think it is you know, there's some projects that I'm in where I go, it's a niche audience. Maybe I wouldn't share it with my mom or something. Yeah. But VHS is really a thing that I feel like I could send it to anybody, you know, and
my grandma came to the show, and she's 93.
we got to meet James's family. They were awesome. Yeah, all your family came. They were beaming the whole time. It was so good to see them there.
Yeah.
James, is there anything you got going on that you want to shout out? I feel like all of us are just ending the year. So.
Yeah, we're ending the year. I know I'm very fortunate. In the new year, I will be doing Ain't Misbehaving down at Laguna Playhouse.
That's right. Yeah. You guys start rehearsals like first week of January.
January 2nd to be exact. So I'll say Happy New Year, and then I got to go. But yeah, and then I think we open our first preview is January 24th. We open on January 28th, and then we close on February 11th. So if for some reason you are down near Laguna Beach, come see our show.
Yeah, if you're in any LA or Orange County area, it's not, it's a drive, but like definitely worth it. And they do really good stuff out there. Really, really good stuff. Here's a great question. What was the thinking behind, this is from Sim Divya, the thinking behind the double casting? There's something about Jim and Della / being young Scrooge and Belle that's interesting. Also Fred, Tiny Tim. Was that just kind of due to availability of the actors, or were you consciously thinking about, because I do think it's really intriguing as an actor, the Jim to young Scrooge arc, I think is really interesting in my head, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of column A, column B. One of the first things Clark specifically had said was that, and this is before we had cast the show, was that Jim and Della would be the couple in Act 2 during the final Ghost. So that was something he had already decided from the jump. And then other castings, it was kind of due to actor availability, but I think this worked out the way that it should have, because I think Brian did a great job as Fred. And then the fact that he was also Tiny Tim, I'm never taking that role away from him, because who else could ever do it? And in fact, I would have to give him kudos too, because I had asked him if he wanted to bow as Fred or Tiny Tim, and initially I said, like, you should probably just do Fred, so that way you don't have to change costumes. But then we weren't going to have Tiny Tim in the final picture, so we're like, he said, no, I'm doing the change, and he did it. He did it every single night. So I'm very thankful that he did that. Yeah,
he made that change happen.
Yeah, and then other double casting. I mean, you can look at it in the way that Jamie Burns was Grandma, and also Christmas Future, very ethereal presences. I think most of them were just due to actor availability, but they were happy coincidences that, for story purposes, they still made sense, and so they all worked.
It kind of reminds me of, I read an article or an interview with Fincher once where it was talking about, somebody was asking him, like, what do you think about when you read film criticism, analyzing your films and all that? And he was saying, it's very lovely. It's awesome when people do, but he's like, sometimes he's like, you read an essay that's like, the slightly off-kilter horizon is indicative of the protagonist's feeling of emotional dismay. And he said, he's like, or sometimes the tripod was a little off balance. It's like, that's what's so beautiful, I think, about creativity, is that sometimes some of the most profound artistic meaning that people derive sometimes isn't necessarily super intentional. Right. I think obviously you have to be intentional thematically and emotionally and tonally, but sometimes, and that's what's so beautiful about doing a show, is that really it becomes the audience's show. Like, it's like, you make the choices you make, but then the audience is there to interpret and to derive what that is. So it's like young Scrooge and Jim are double cast because, like, that just makes sense. But then the audience watches it and can read into that what they will. And I think that's just, sometimes I have to remind myself as a creator that I don't necessarily have to account for everything that an audience will take in. I can just be intentional and then do what I have to do to get the thing done. And the audience often will fill in the rest. And like, I think particularly starkid fans, and I experienced this on Glee, folks will just take small moments and run with them. And I love that. That's why it's amazing that, like, when I was working on Glee, it's like, I was barely on that show sometimes, but people would go, no. This one look that Kurt's character gives to Darren's character, here's an entire six page fan fiction about what he was thinking. And I go, I don't remember when I did that take. I probably was just looking at a piece of tape on a C-stand or something, but the audience is the glue that comes in and like gives it resonance and meaning. And so I don't know, it's a good thing to remember as an artist that you don't have to like be everything. You just have to be intentional about what you're doing in the moment, you know?
Absolutely. And I'm thankful that we were a part of something that people are connecting to, you know, like I'm glad they can make up the lore and the stories. And I mean, there's a whole theory about Scrooge adopting the match girl. I just read on Tumblr earlier.
Yeah.
And so and so I'm glad that people are inspired by it. I'm glad that they are connecting, because that's really what we want to do as artists, is connect through our art. Yeah, so like, whether it's intentional or not, actually, this reminds me, there's an Easter egg in the show, that I don't know if anyone's noticed it. What it is, it involves the trio. I don't want to say it. I want to see if people can find it. There's a specific moment in Act 1 that I threw in. It's not referenced in any lines. It's not referenced through any kind of specific choreography, but there is something involving the trio. And I'm wondering if people will notice it. So I'm going to leave it out in the ether for a little bit. I'll comment on it in a couple weeks or so.
It's a challenge. You got to go find what that is.
Yeah.
Guess you'll just have to get that digital ticket. I guess you're just going to have to go check it out.
Have to check it out. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking about the whole, like, truly, because people ask me a lot, they're like, what do you think of like fan fiction and stuff? And I'm like, that is what all artists do. Like when you are a writer and you write a spec script to try to get representation, you take a show that you love and you write your version of it. You know, when you even mentioned how much storytelling through 80s music videos influenced that. Yes, you're in a different story, but like we're constantly borrowing and taking ideas and remixing them. And so the greatest gift to me is that if an audience bothered to keep thinking about your story after it's over, you've won. Like it's just getting people to pay attention feels sometimes, especially in today's just constant, there's just so much media and stuff. The fact that people watch a story and don't just go, huh, and they go off and they do artwork and they write about it and they think about, I'm just like, that is the greatest feeling as a person who helped be part of a story coming to life, is that it continues to live on. Like that's truly one of the best. It makes you go, okay, this is worth it. This is worth it because the audience, it's now theirs. It's not mine. It's kind of, in fact, it kind of bothers me when certain film directors will like try to tell an audience how to interpret a thing. There's some directors I love, like Aronofsky does this. Love Aronofsky as a director, but like he will tell, like when he did Mother, I think it's a really interesting movie, but then
I love that movie.
Me too.
Yeah.
But then he went on a press tour and was like, no, this is what it means. Mother is the earth. And you're like, yes,
I got that.
It was cooler when I figured that out. Like if you start to be like, no, this is the interpretation. I think it's super valid when a director or creator has their own interpretation, but I think it's really cool when somebody's like, I see it this way. And you go, amazing. That's amazing. It can be challenging, I think, when an audience is so hopeful or expectant of a certain creative decision that maybe doesn't come to pass. And then they sometimes can feel like betrayed. And, that's a whole nother issue, but I love it. I love it when an audience sort of goes, here's the version that exists. And then here's a version that lives in my head, and both are super valid. It's just, I don't know. I think that's so cool. Well, James, thank you so much for coming on and chatting about it. Again, I know I said it, but I was just so honored to be able to work with you on a show that you directed. And I think you're a phenomenal director. I think it's something you were born to do. You're so good at it. And I hope I get to do more things where you direct, because it was just an absolute joy. And
dude, the pleasure.
Fantastic.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure was all mine. I remember you had sent me a text right after we had cast the show, and you said, thank you for taking a chance on me. And I want you to know, I didn't have to take any chance on you. I already knew you were going to rise to the occasion, and it showed. And thank you for bringing yourself to this project again, because you made my life easier by just being as talented and as focused as you are. So I'm a happy man.
Thank you. It's one of the best. It's one of the most dear memory, like things that I've done this year. I think it's like I will hold on to this for a long while. So if you haven't seen it, you guys should go watch it. Clearly,
until the end of December. Get your digital ticket. Yeah. And
listen, it's a great. I feel like now we're doing like a PBS like drive, but truly, what a great thing you could do with your family. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Family drama, conversations are hard.
Yeah.
Put on VHS Christmas carols.
Yeah.
Problem solved. Everyone will look at each other through a new lens.
Mhm.
You'll all start being the light to each other. That it's going to fix all of your. No, I'm not going to promise.
It'll
that,
clear
but-
skin, clear skin. You know,
Clear skin. All family drama erased.
awesome.
All right. Well, James, thank you so much for being here, and
Yeah.
folks for watching. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you all very soon.
Happy holidays.
Bye. Happy holidays.